People have been debating what happens to the brain after death. Some people who have had near-death experiences have described the sensation of life flashing before their eyes. Some say these statements are just a myth. Let's find out. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Thank you for joining us today. Today we'll be speaking about near-death experiences and what happens when we're dying. Stick till the end and watch the entire video to get all the details. Also, remember to like, share, subscribe, and click the bell notification. Alright then, let's get started. Many people who have had NDEs, near-death experiences, describe their life flashing before their eyes. Of course, it's hard to say whether or not people experience this occurrence when they die regularly. Clinical death is usually thought to occur when the heart stops pumping, but nothing is known about how long the brain remains alive or, at the very least, how long brain signals continue to be delivered after this. An editorial published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience examined a single case study and discovered that brain signals continue for 30 seconds after the heart stops beating. Dr. Jessica Andrews Hanna, assistant professor of cognition and brain systems at the University of Arizona, who was not needed in the research, told MNT in an email that the study's findings could not be generalizable to other people because it only included one 87-year-old patient. However, she continued, "It's interesting that the brain wave patterns preceding this man's death were comparable to those linked with remembering, dreaming, and other thinking processes involving interaction between multiple brain regions." These discoveries, taken together, provide a unique but tentative peek into the mind in its dying moments. Researchers describe how an 87-year-old patient visited a hospital in Vancouver, Canada in 2016 after a fall caused the brain bleed. He had surgery to correct the brain hemorrhage, but he began having convulsions 2 days later. Doctors gave him the anti-epileptic medications, phenytoin and levetiracetam to treat his seizures, and he had an EEG to establish the cause. At least 12 distinct electrographic seizures were observed while obtaining the EEG. The patient then went into cardiac arrest, and his healthcare staff stopped treating him after consulting with his family, who informed them that he had a "do not resuscitate" order. They did, however, collect 900 seconds of EEG data. According to the researchers, brain activity stopped across the brain shortly after the convulsions, followed by a 30-second rise in oscillatory activity with relatively high gamma-type brain signals before cardiac arrest. After cardiac arrest, this activity decreased for around 30 seconds before ceasing completely. The study was organized by author and neurosurgeon Dr. Ajmal Zemar, currently a neurosurgeon at the University of Louisville. In an interview, he told MNT, "Our analysis is the first to indicate that these oscillatory waves are present in the dying human brain, suggesting that they could provide a neurophysiological substance, a brain signal form, for near-death experiences." At the time of the patient's death, he was a member of the core team in Toronto. Near-death experiences may be linked to brain functions because their research had demonstrated brain activity after the heart had ceased pumping. He said the study raises the question of when are we truly dead? However, the study's authors emphasize that conclusions from a single case study are not generalizable. They also have no equivalent brain activity for this patient because he entered the scanner having convulsions. They also noted that he had been given medicines to change brain function and was generally ill. The researchers withheld publication of the findings until they could obtain more comparable data. A search of the literature turned up a 2013 paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Similar oscillating gamma waves were observed in rats 30 seconds after cardiac arrest, and they were also observed in this patient. The researchers show evidence in the publication that these brain signals have relationships with memory recall. According to neurotheology professor Andrew Newberg, health specialists could evaluate whether or not these brain waves explain near-death experiences if we understood where in the brain they happened and had additional case studies to back it up. Professor Newberg is also the Thomas Jefferson University Hospital's Marcus Institute of Integrative Health Research Director. He was not a participant in the study. "This study undoubtedly had neurotheological ramifications," he wrote in an email to MNT. "It can help us grasp how certain components of near-death experiences might be related to continued brain activity long after the heart stops beating." Near-death experiences are nothing new. According to Plato, Socrates had one, Pliny the Elder recorded another in the 1st century, and history is replete with stories of mountaineers plunging from cliffs and experiencing ecstasy rather than panic. But we appear to be captivated by their significance, and they continue to be generously peppered across popular culture. One Dutch study published in The Lancet attempted to separate cause elements from the frequencies of NDEs. According to researchers, 50% of those who had an NDE acknowledged awareness of being dead, 56% of those thought it was a nice experience, 24% had an OBE, 31% recounted traveling via a tunnel, and 32% spoke of communicating with deceased people. The study also revealed that, even though all of the patients examined were clinically dead at one point, only a tiny number, 18%, experienced or remembered the NDE. The level of cerebral anoxia, loss of oxygen to the brain, the amount of prior fear, or the type of medication they were taking did not affect the likelihood of having an NDE. According to the study, individuals under 60 were more likely to have NDEs, while women described more intense experiences. Those who had memory losses after resuscitation, on the other hand, were less likely to report NDEs, as expected. Something is driving these sensations, but the elements influencing them are still being debated. There are cultural flexibilities in NDEs. The NDE phenomenon is especially intriguing since psychological and physiological elements are linked to social and cultural issues. A 40-year-old white male from Nebraska, for example, may have thoughts of a shimmering white, bearded male inviting him through pearl-encrusted gates. A 12-year-old lad from Papua New Guinea, however, is unlikely to. The Machu people of South America and citizens of Hawaii are more likely to view landscapes and volcanoes, whereas NDEs in Thailand and India are less likely to incorporate landmarks, tunnels, or lights. For Tibetans, light and perceptions of rebirth play a larger role. The nature of NDEs is certainly influenced by culture and a person's wishes or ambitions, yet what biological mechanisms could be behind this bizarre phenomenon? A widespread phenomenon cannot be disregarded as merely another urban legend. There must be something biological at work to explain its ubiquity. Some observers believe that NDEs reveal a gap in present neuroscientific thinking and reveal another, more esoteric aspect of human existence. Many people believe that we should finally separate the mind from the brain's operations. However, this style of thinking is not required to explain NDEs, rather than alleging paranormal origins. The area of cognitive neuroscience has approached the problem as it would any other, as the brain output. There are various plausible explanations for each individual's experience. The preceding are some hypotheses about the biological origins of NDEs. The contrast between civilizations listed above attests that expectation plays a role in the overall NDE, but expectation appears to play a larger role. Surprisingly, NDEs sometimes occur in persons who were not, in fact, near death, but only believed they were. One study of 58 patients' NDE experiences discovered that 30 were not on the verge of dying. However, as we'll see, there is more to an NDE than meets the eye. Out-of-body experiences, OBEs, are prominent in NDEs and can include autoscopy, viewing one's own body from above. Even though this appears to be an out-of-this-world experience, neuroscientists know that OBEs can occur in the circumstances other than the near deathbed. OBEs are common during an incidence of sleep paralysis, which affects up to 40% of people at some point in their lives. Sleep paralysis happens when a person is still fundamentally in REM sleep, but their brain partially rises. The brain essentially paralyzes the body during REM sleep to prevent it from acting out dreams. The brain, still assuming that the individual is sleeping, maintains the lock on the body, putting the individual into a horrible, actual walking nightmare. The sensation of floating from one's body and witnessing the room from the ceiling's perspective is common during the experience. Meeting and greeting the deceased is another often reported characteristic of NDEs that can be explained in part by expectations. Tales of paradise or some other form of the afterlife where long-dead family joyfully await us abound in cultures. Furthermore, people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease have been known to have vivid hallucinations of ghost-like creatures. Some have even reported seeing dead relatives in their homes. Pallidotomy lesions, a type of neurosurgery utilized in some Parkinson's patients, have been associated with these types of apparitions. The experiences are thought to result from dopamine pathway malfunction, a neurotransmitter implicated in the brain's reward pathways that are known to generate hallucinations. A brain in shock, inundated by endogenous opioids, can explain some of the profound emotions of quiet and serenity. For many years, the particular nature of each NDE would remain unknown. After all, catching them in the act at one of the most vital periods in a person's life is no easy undertaking, and the ethics of experimental interventions may be complicated. One thing is certain, NDEs are fascinating and have nothing to do with the hereafter. Well, that's all we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.